All right, so ready to dive into one of the most, well, dramatic scenes in literature.
Always up for a good tragedy.
We're talking Act 4, Scene 5 of Romeo and Juliet.
Ah, yes, where everything hits the fan.
Pretty much.
Juliet's just taken that potion, remember? Everyone thinks she's dead.
And if you're studying this play, get ready to take some notes.
This scene is packed with stuff you absolutely have to understand.
We're talking raw grief, of course.
Oh yeah, buckets of it.
But also that dramatic irony.
You know, where we, the audience, know what's up, but the characters are clueless?
Exactly, which makes it all the more intense.
And just wait, Shakespeare even throws in some, well,
The what?
dark humor.
Oh, right. Shakespeare loved to do that.
Even in the middle of a tragedy, he finds a way to make you chuckle.
Okay, so picture this. The scene opens with the nurse.
Bless her heart.
She barges into Juliet's room, totally oblivious to the whole potion plan.
She's all excited for the wedding, you know.
Calls Juliet a slug a bed.
Talk about bad timing, right?
Oh, it's more than just bad timing.
Oh, it's brilliant, actually.
How so?
Well, Shakespeare uses those lighthearted lines to make the nurse's eventual realization even more devastating.
Oh, you mean when she finally figures out that Juliet's dead?
Exactly. The contrast is what gets you.
And the way her language changes.
Oh, yeah, that's important to notice.
It goes from playful teasing to
these panicked cries for help, almost like she can't believe what she's seeing.
it's heartbreaking.
And that's exactly what Shakespeare wants us to feel.
The weight of that mistaken death.
And remember, we in the audience know Juliet's not really dead.
But the characters on stage are totally in the dark,
Dramatic irony at its finest.
which creates this unbearable tension.
You know, like you're watching a car crash in slow motion.
You know what's going to happen.
But you can't look away.
And speaking of things you can't look away from.
Here come Lord and Lady Capulet.
Yeah, talk about a parent's worst nightmare.
This is where Shakespeare's language gets really interesting, I think.
In what way?
Well, he could just say Juliet's dead, right?
I guess so.
But instead, he describes her death with these incredibly beautiful poetic lines.
Like what?
He says, "Death lies on her like an untimely frost upon the sweetest flower of all the field."
Wow, that's powerful.
It's heartbreaking, you know? It really emphasizes this loss of potential.
Of youth cut short.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Lord Capulet does something really strange.
What's that?
He calls death his son-in-law and heir.
That is a strange one, isn't it?
Why do you think he uses that metaphor?
Well, I think it gives us a glimpse into Capulet's state of mind.
How so?
It reveals more than just grief. Remember, this was a time when family lineage was everything.
Oh, right, like having a son to carry on the family name was a big deal.
Huge deal. And Juliet was his only heir, so her death doesn't just mean the loss of a daughter.
It means the end of his family line.
The end of his legacy, which adds this whole other layer to his despair.
So we've got the nurse's panic, the parents' crushing grief.
And as if things couldn't get any worse.
Here comes Paris.
All set for his wedding day.
Talk about awkward.
Poor Paris. He walks in expecting a celebration and finds his bride dead.
How does he react to that?
It's a mix of shock, grief, and even betrayal, I'd say.
Betrayal.
Well, yeah, remember, he wasn't just in love with Juliet. This marriage was a strategic move for him.
Oh, right, a way to climb the social ladder.
Exactly. So he's not just losing a wife, he's losing a chance to elevate his status.
And Shakespeare makes sure we don't forget that.
No, he doesn't. He emphasizes that double loss, the personal and the political, in Paris's lines.
So it's like watching someone's dreams go up in smoke right in front of you.
Pretty much.
Now, just when you think things can't get any more chaotic, who walks in?
The one and only Friar Lawrence.
Talk about being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
He's the only one who actually knows what's going on with Juliet.
But even he is completely caught off guard by the intensity of everyone's grief.
Well, yeah, I mean, he sees Juliet's body and everyone's freaking out.
And his first line is almost comical, given the circumstances.
What does he say?
Come, is the bride ready to go to church?
Oh, man, the irony.
Talk about bad timing, Rip.
Seriously. But what's interesting is how he tries to take control of the situation.
Like he's trying to restore some kind of order in the middle of all this chaos.
Exactly. And he tries to comfort the Capulets by saying Juliet's in a better place now, that she's in heaven.
But it comes across as kind of cold, don't you think?
Yeah, a little insensitive, even though he's trying so hard to maintain this facade, to hide his own involvement in the potion plan.
Which is a great point to bring up. for those of you analyzing the play.
Right.
Think about Friar Lawrence's motivations here.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
Is he really trying to help Romeo and Juliet?
Or is he more concerned with protecting himself, covering his own tracks?
It makes you question the ethics of his actions, right?
Absolutely. And this inner conflict that Friar Lawrence is dealing with.
It makes him a really complex and fascinating character.
He's not just some holy man spouting wisdom. He's human, you know?
Flawed and capable of making some pretty big mistakes. And just when you think the scene couldn't possibly get any weirder.
Hold on tight.
Because who shows up?
Peter and the musicians.
It's like Shakespeare decided to inject a little dose of dark humor right into the heart of this tragedy.
It's a jarring tonal shift, for sure.
But so classic Shakespeare.
He loves to use humor to lighten the mood, even in his darkest plays.
And it's not just any humor.
It's this absurd, almost inappropriate kind of humor.
The kind that makes you laugh even though you probably shouldn't.
Exactly.
So Peter's basically begging the musicians to play something upbeat, something to soothe his grief.
And the musicians, well, they're more concerned about getting paid and having dinner.
There's the fact that Juliet's supposedly dead.
It's like they're on a completely different wavelength, totally oblivious to the tragedy unfolding around them.
And that contrast, that juxtaposition of grief and absurdity.
That's what makes the scene so unforgettable. It's like he's showing us that even in the face of death, life, with all its little absurdities, just keeps going.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that life is messy.
Unpredictable.
And sometimes, yeah, even funny in the darkest moments.
Speaking of dark moments, this scene is crucial for understanding the rest of the play.
How so?
Well, we've got all these characters reacting to Juliet's death, but this is just the beginning.
Oh, right, the real tragedy is still to come.
Exactly, because Romeo's still out there, totally unaware of what's happened.
And we all know Romeo.
He's not exactly known for his calm demeanor.
The guy's a walking, talking emotional time bomb.
And this whole situation with Juliet pretending to be dead.
It's like lighting the fuse.
So this scene is like the calm before the storm, that moment where everything hangs in the balance.
Before it all goes to hell.
Pretty much.
So it's not just about Juliet's death, right?
No, it's about the ripple effects.
How one decision, one secret, can have these unintended and tragic consequences.
And it makes you think, how much control do we really have over our own lives?
Are we just pawns in some bigger game?
At the mercy of forces we can't even comprehend.
Deep stuff.
That's Shakespeare for you.
Never one to shy away from the big questions.
He forces us to confront those uncomfortable truths, you know?
Makes us examine our own beliefs and assumptions.
About life, love, loss, the whole shebang.
Now, before we move on, I want to talk about the nurse for a second.
Ah, yes, the nurse.
She's often dismissed as just comic relief.
But there's more to her than that, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. She's the one who raised Juliet, who knows her better than anyone.
And her grief when she discovers Juliet's body.
It's raw, it's visceral.
It's heartbreaking, you really feel it.
And it makes you wonder, what if she had known about the potion?
What do you mean?
Would she have gone along with Friar Lawrence's plan?
Or would she have tried to stop it to protect Juliet?
It's tough to say, because on the one hand, she's fiercely loyal to Juliet.
But on the other hand, she's also very practical, concerned with Juliet's well-being.
So, would she have risked Juliet's life on such a risky scheme?
It's a good question, and it really highlights the complexity of her character.
She's not just a source of laughs. She's a woman with her own motivations, fears, and love for Juliet.
Exactly, and that's what makes her so interesting to study.
She reminds us that even the seemingly minor characters in Shakespeare's plays have depth.
That their actions, their choices matter.
So before we wrap up our deep dive into this scene,
Ready for the grand finale.
let's take a moment to just appreciate Shakespeare's genius.
The man was a master storyteller.
He's crafted this incredibly layered and multifaceted scene that works on so many levels.
It's funny, it's heartbreaking.
Suspenseful, thought-provoking.
It's got it all.
And it stays with you long after you've read it.
Makes you think about those big questions, you know?
The power of love, the consequences of our actions.
Fate versus free will.
All that good stuff.
And remember, this scene is a turning point.
It sets the whole chain reaction in motion.
Everything that happens from here on out is a direct result of what we see unfold in Act 4, Scene 5.
So pay attention, folks.
This is where things get really interesting. Because up until this point, it's all been, well, misunderstanding.
Right, like mistaken identity, confusion.
Sad, sure, but nobody's actually dead yet.
Yeah, it's more about the potential for tragedy.
But Act 4, Scene 5, this is where it shifts.
This is the domino that sets everything else in motion.
The catalyst for the real heartbreak.
Exactly, because think about it.
Everyone's in this frenzy trying to cope with this supposed death.
Yeah, but none of them truly grasp what's coming next.
Not even Friar Lawrence, the one who orchestrated the whole thing.
It's like Shakespeare gives us this brief pause
This moment of stillness.
before this storm really hits.
So we can absorb the weight of what's about to happen.
And for those of you studying the play,
Pay close attention here.
this is where those close reading skills come in handy.
Look for those subtle details.
The foreshadowing, the symbolism,
Shakespeare's not just throwing stuff in there for fun.
every line, every image, it's all carefully chosen.
To build that sense of dread, of impending doom.
Like he's leaving a trail of breadcrumbs, you know?
And it's up to us, the audience, to follow them.
To piece together the bigger picture.
Which, trust me, gets pretty dark from here on out.
So the big question is, how does Romeo react to this news?
I mean, we've seen him impulsive before.
Quick to anger, quick to despair.
What happens when he hears that Juliet is dead?
Yeah, because remember, Friar Lawrence is the only one with the truth.
He knows Juliet's actually alive.
But can he reach Romeo in time?
Can he undo the mess he's created?
It's a race against time.
And the stakes are incredibly high.
Because if he fails,
Wow.
we all know how this story ends.
Tragically.
And this is where those themes of fate and consequence really come into play.
Is Romeo destined for this tragic end?
Or could Friar Lawrence's intervention actually change things?
It's like Shakespeare's challenging us to think about the role of chance
Of human error.
in shaping our destinies.
Since you wonder, are we really in control of our own lives?
Or are we just playing out a script that's already been written?
That's the beauty of Shakespeare, I think.
He doesn't shy away from the tough questions.
Moral dilemmas,
He forces us to confront these uncomfortable truths.
to examine our own beliefs.
Our assumptions about love, life, death, everything.
So as you continue reading Romeo and Juliet,
Keep those questions in mind.
pay attention to how each character reacts to this turning point.
How their actions, their choices contribute to the final outcome.
Because in the end, this scene isn't just about death,
It's about life
about the choices we make.
and the consequences we face.
It reminds us that even in the darkest moments,
There's always hope,
the possibility for redemption,
but it's also a cautionary tale
urging us to act with wisdom
with compassion.
and with a clear understanding of the potential impact of our choices.
Well, folks, that's our deep dive into Act 4, Scene 5 of Romeo and Juliet.
We hope you've gained some new insights
And that you'll approach the rest of the play with, well,
with a fresh perspective
with a curious mind.
and maybe even a slightly heavier heart.
But remember, Shakespeare isn't just meant to be read.
It's meant to be experienced, debated, discussed.
So go out there, fellow scholars,
And share your thoughts, your interpretations.
and your newfound appreciation for the bard.
Until next time.
Farewell.